welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're exploring the Quran, but from a perspective you probably haven't encountered before.
Oh, yeah.
You've sent over transcripts from hypnosis sessions focused on the Quran, and I have to say, this is fascinating and uncharted territory.
It certainly is. We're used to academic analyses of scripture.
Right.
But these hypnosis sessions offer a glimpse into how individuals connect with the Quran on a subconscious level.
It feels like we're getting insider knowledge straight from the source, which is kind of thrilling.
Yeah.
So walk me through these transcripts.
Yeah.
What kind of common themes emerged?
Well, despite each person having a unique experience, there were some remarkable similarities. Like, almost everyone had incredibly vivid visualizations of the Quran itself, though the interpretations varied.
Okay, that's already intriguing. Can you give me an example?
Sure.
What did these visualizations look like?
One participant, Svetlana, described the Quran as an ornate, beautiful book. Right.
But it wasn't just a static object to her.
Interesting.
She saw it as a record player for information, with the reader acting as a conduit between a higher source and the world.
Wow, like a spiritual antenna.
Yeah. That
suggests a more active role for the reader than just passively absorbing information.
Right.
What about other visualizations?
Another participant, Tatiana, envisioned two inscriptions.
Okay.
One gold, representing Allah's love, and one black, symbolizing his punishment.
Interesting.
This duality of love and punishment was a recurring theme throughout many of the sessions.
That makes sense, considering the concept of divine justice is so central to many religions.
Right.
It's fascinating to see how these abstract concepts take shape in the subconscious mind.
Absolutely.
And this idea of duality even extends to the way people experience the Quran itself.
Yeah.
For some, it evoked feelings of peace and connection, but for others, like Tatiana, it felt encoded, almost like a form of programming.
Designed to restrict free will.
Interesting.
That's a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
What did the others say about the potential for control or manipulation?
Well, several participants touched upon the power of recitation and ritual.
Oh, yeah?
Svetlana, for instance, felt that reciting the Quran, word for word, letter for letter, strengthens the connection to what's known as the Islamic egregore.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Egregore.
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't familiar with that term.
So you know how at a concert, like, the energy of the crowd, like, feeds into the performance?
Yeah.
An egregore is like that.
Okay.
But on a spiritual level, it's a collective energy field associated with a particular belief system, in this case, Islam.
Okay.
The more people believe and participate in the rituals, the stronger the egregore becomes.
So the idea is that the specific way the Quran is recited helps individuals tap into that collective energy.
Exactly.
Got it.
Svetlana even described it as a form of programming that can suppress individual will and transfer power to the egregore.
What?
However, this wasn't a universally shared experience.
Right.
Tatiana, for instance, felt her energy being drained or manipulated during the 5 daily prayers, making her feel vulnerable to external influences.
It sounds like there's a fine line between connecting with a collective energy and potentially being influenced by it.
For sure.
That raises a lot of questions about the nature of free will.
It certainly does.
And this brings us to another common theme that emerged.
Okay.
The authorship and evolution of the Quran.
Okay.
Every single person under hypnosis stated that the current version is not the original.
Interesting.
Wait, really? Did they offer any insights into how or why it might have been changed?
Some saw Muhammad as a central figure, channeling and adapting divine messages, while others described a team of scribes or inspired individuals contributing to the text over time. A few even claimed it was rewritten relatively recently as 50 years ago, to make it more palatable to modern society, soften punishments, or introduce more control mechanisms.
That's a bold claim. Of course, we have to remember that these are accounts given under hypnosis, not historical facts.
Correct.
But the consistency across these sessions is intriguing.
Absolutely.
And it raises important questions about the nature of sacred text and how they evolve over time.
Right.
Are they static pronouncements from a divine source or living documents shaped by human interpretation?
That's the question.
That's a question for the ages, isn't it? Okay, so we've got these fascinating common threads running through the sessions.
Right.
But what about individual accounts? Were there any particularly memorable stories that stood out?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, let's hear it.
For instance, the visions of the Prophet Muhammad were incredibly diverse.
Okay.
One participant, Yevgenia,
Yeah.
described him as this incredibly kind and compassionate figure,
Oh, wow.
bringing sacred words to a new land, healing people, and spreading love.
A very classic image of a prophet.
Right.
But it sounds like others had very different experiences.
Indeed.
Give me an example.
Tamara, for example, saw Muhammad as more of a mythical figure,
Huh.
an archetype whose image evolved over time to suit the needs of the religion.
Oh, interesting.
It's almost like she was seeing him as a symbol rather than a historical person.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So even the central figure of Islam is subject to individual interpretation.
Seems that way.
What about other figures?
Yeah.
Did anyone have visions of angels or jinn?
Oh.
Okay, I
Oh.
want to hear all about that.
And those descriptions were just as varied and fascinating.
Awesome.
We'll dive into those right after a quick break.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're exploring these hypnotic sessions focused on the Quran, and before the break, we were just starting to talk about the visions of angels and jinn.
Right. Everyone loves a good angel story. What did these individuals experience?
The experiences were quite varied, highlighting the subjective nature of these encounters.
Yeah.
Some, like Svetlana, had a classic image of angels
Okay.
as benevolent beings.
Right. Dressed in white,
Mhm.
offering comfort and guidance.
Mhm.
She even described them as resembling Jesus.
That's a powerful visual.
Mhm.
Did anyone else have similar experiences?
Interestingly, Yevgenia had a very different perspective. She saw both angels and jinn as workers within this larger system we've been talking about, the Islamic egregore.
Okay.
For her, angels weren't so much independent beings,
Right.
but more like functionaries carrying out specific tasks.
So less about free will and more about following orders. That's quite a departure from the traditional image of angels.
Exactly. And her vision of jinn was even more intriguing.
Oh.
She described them as beings responsible for implanting and controlling energy flow,
Yeah.
which sounds a little more,
Ominous.
yeah.
It definitely gives off a different vibe. Not exactly the mischievous tricksters often depicted in folklore.
Right.
It's almost like they're the engineers of this spiritual system.
That's a great way to put it. And these differing interpretations really underscore how our personal beliefs and cultural background can shape our understanding of these spiritual entities.
Speaking of shaping beliefs, we've talked a lot about the potential for control within the Quran.
Yeah.
Were there any other instances in these sessions where that theme came up?
Yes, actually, several participants expressed concerns about the Quran's stance on women and their perceived role in Islamic society.
That's a sensitive but important topic. What did they have to say?
Tamara, in particular, felt that women were viewed primarily as instruments for reproduction,
Oh, wow.
valued mainly for their ability to bear male offspring.
Okay.
She felt this reinforced a patriarchal structure that limited women's opportunities and agency.
That's definitely not a message of empowerment. Did she offer any insights into why this perspective might be so ingrained in the text?
She connected it to a potentially distorted understanding of sexuality within Islam,
Okay.
suggesting that men are often conditioned to equate dominance with masculinity.
Interesting.
This, she felt, created an unhealthy dynamic between the sexes and contributed to the power imbalance.
It's a complex issue, for sure.
Yeah.
And it seems like these sessions are raising more questions than answers when it comes to the Quran's teachings and their impact on individuals.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the most intriguing aspect of these sessions,
Okay.
the visions and interpretations of Allah himself.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting.
Hmm.
We've already touched upon the duality of love and punishment associated with Allah, but I'm guessing these individual sessions went even deeper.
They did. And the diversity of experiences is truly remarkable.
Like what?
Some participants, like Svetlana, perceived Allah as a loving and merciful God, very much in line with traditional Islamic teachings. However, others, like Tamara, had drastically different encounters.
Okay, on the edge of my seat. What did Tamara experience?
Her vision of Allah was perhaps the most radical of all. She claimed that Allah has no DNA and is simply an artificial matrix, or egregore, created and sustained by human belief.
Whoa, that's a mind-blowing concept. It suggests that Allah is not a fixed entity, but rather a fluid concept, shaped by the collective consciousness of those who believe in him.
Precisely. And this idea that our beliefs can actually shape the nature of the divine is both incredibly empowering and a little bit terrifying.
It definitely challenges our traditional understanding of God. Did anyone else have similar experiences?
Yevgenia also sensed that different entities might be posing as law.
Really?
for different groups or individuals. It was as if she was picking up on this cosmic chameleon, adapting its form based on the expectations of those connecting with it.
So not just one Allah, but multiple manifestations. That raises a whole host of theological questions.
It certainly does, and it underscores the subjective nature of religious experience. Even when dealing with something as fundamental as the concept of God, personal interpretation seems to play a significant role.
It's like we're all looking at the same divine puzzle, but seeing completely different pictures based on our own unique perspectives.
Exactly. And these hypnotic sessions offer a fascinating glimpse into how those individual pieces fit together to create a mosaic of belief. But before we delve deeper into those individual interpretations, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered so far.
These hypnotic sessions are really challenging my assumptions about the Quran and the
Yeah.
nature of faith in general.
Right.
It's like we're peering behind the curtain
Yeah.
and seeing the machinery of belief in action.
I think that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
These accounts, while subjective, force us to confront the idea that our understanding of even the most sacred texts is filtered through our own experiences and perceptions.
And sometimes those filters can reveal some pretty unsettling things.
You're right.
We've talked about the potential for control and manipulation,
Yeah.
the patriarchal structures,
Yeah.
and even the possibility that what we perceive as divine is actually a construct of our own minds.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
It is. But I believe these uncomfortable truths are necessary to confront. If we want to have an honest and meaningful relationship with our faith,
Right.
we can't shy away from the shadows.
So how do we reconcile these conflicting perspectives?
Mm.
On the one hand, we have these beautiful descriptions of Allah as a loving and merciful God.
Right.
And on the other hand, we have these experiences of control, manipulation,
Yeah.
and even the suggestion that Allah is an artificial construct.
I think the key lies in embracing the paradox.
Okay.
The Quran, like any complex text, can hold multiple truths simultaneously.
So it could be a source of comfort and guidance, but also a tool for control.
Exactly.
It can speak to the depths of our souls, but also reflect the limitations of human understanding.
That's right.
So are you saying there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to interpreting the Quran?
In a way, yes. Each individual brings their own baggage to the table,
Okay.
their own hopes and fears,
Why?
their own cultural conditioning. All of that shapes how they perceive the text and the divine.
But doesn't that lead to a slippery slope of relativism?
Hmm.
If everyone's interpretation is equally valid, how do we determine what's true?
That's where critical thinking comes in.
Okay.
We can't simply accept any interpretation at face value.
Yeah.
We need to engage with the text thoughtfully, to question our assumptions,
Right.
and to be open to the possibility that our understanding might evolve over time.
It sounds like you're advocating for a more personal and dynamic relationship with the Quran.
Yes.
One that's less about blind faith and more about conscious exploration.
Exactly. I believe true faith is not about clinging to rigid dogma,
Right.
but about constantly seeking a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe around us.
Okay.
The Quran can be a valuable tool in that journey, but it shouldn't be the only one.
So where do these hypnotic sessions fit into that journey? What can we learn from these glimpses into the subconscious mind?
I think they remind us that our relationship with the divine is far more complex and nuanced than we often realize.
Right.
They challenge us to look beyond the surface of the text and to confront the shadows within our own beliefs.
And they highlight the power of individual interpretation.
Absolutely.
Even something as seemingly fixed as a sacred text can be seen through a multitude of lenses,
Yeah.
each revealing a different facet of truth.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's like we're all holding shards of a broken mirror,
Yeah.
each reflecting a fragmented image of the divine.
Right.
And it's up to each of us to piece those fragments together to create our own unique understanding.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
It reminds us that the search for meaning is an ongoing process,
Right.
one that requires both humility
Yeah.
and courage.
Hmm.
We have to be willing to question our assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
to confront our biases,
Right.
and to embrace the mystery of the unknown.
And perhaps most importantly, we have to remember that this journey is not a solitary one.
Okay.
We're all connected, all seeking understanding, and
Yeah.
all contributing to the collective tapestry of human experience.
That's a beautiful thought.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Quran through the lens of hypnosis,
Yeah.
what's the one takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important lesson is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to faith.
Okay.
For the Quran, like any powerful tool
Yeah.
can be used for good or for ill.
Right.
It all depends on the intentions of those wielding it
Right.
and the awareness of those being influenced. So I encourage you to engage with these texts critically,
Okay.
to question your assumptions,
Yeah.
and to ultimately find your own unique path to understanding.
Well said. It seems like the Quran, like any source of wisdom,
Yeah,
requires careful consideration and thoughtful interpretation.
right,
It's not about blind acceptance,
right.
but about engaging in a meaningful dialogue with the text
Yeah.
and with ourselves.
And that dialogue, I believe, is the essence of true spiritual growth.
So, to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and
Yes.
keep seeking. The journey is yours to create.
Right.
And until next time on The Deep Dive, keep diving deeper.